We've seen them on battlefields, alone, in groups, or even by the dozen, but we've never seen them fight by the hundreds. Tanks, tanks, and more tanks.
I'm not easy.
Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the British Army continued its advance in Palestine, though its 3.5-month offensive on the Western Front, the Battle of Passchendaele, came to an end with casualties in the hundreds of thousands. The October Russian Revolution continued, with teenage cadets fighting and dying against the Bolsheviks, and when the former prime minister fled, it was the final end of his government. This week's star, as I said, is tanks, and we saw them at the Battle of Cambrai. The triple belts of wire were crossed as if they had been beds of nettles, and 350 pathways were sheared through them for the infantry. The battle began at 6 a.m. November 20th with a preliminary barrage of 1,000 guns and 6 infantry divisions of the British Third Army, supported by 9 Tank Corps battalions. According to the Tank Museum Bovington, there were 476 total tanks, and 378 of them were fighting tanks. 324 of these were used in the opening attack. This was the first time in history such a large tank force was used. There were also 300 supporting aircraft. More infantry and 3 cavalry divisions were in reserve. The successes were huge and immediate. They broke through the Hindenburg Line in places nearly 10 kilometers deep. The British managed to reach the woods on Bourlon Ridge and the Bapaume-Cambrai Road that day, taking some 4,000 casualties and over 4,000 prisoners. But a full 180 of the tanks were already out of action, destroyed, broken down, or ditched. The Mark IV tank had some serious issues. Even that day, just at Flesquières, German artillery knocked out 39 tanks and stopped the advance in the sector. The next day, a fresh German division arrived from the Russian front and was rushed forward into the line on the Saint-Quentin Canal, where a British breakthrough seemed possible. This ruined the next phase of the British plans, which was in fact a cavalry breakthrough. That day, even with all the elation at home, the tide of battle turned in a violent confrontation at Bourlon Wood. British Commander Sir Douglas Haig had insisted that the wood be taken so they could renew the wider plan of attack. He suggested that the cavalry, whose initial task was to exploit a tank breakthrough, dismount and fight as infantry. They did, supported by 100 tanks, but they could not take the high ground above Bourlon, and the German counterattacks were successful and even recovered 100 of their captured guns. So the week came to an end with the heavy fighting at Bourlon Wood still in progress and the British unable to push ahead. But something big came from Cambrai. Generals on both sides saw that tanks, properly deployed, could have a big impact in battle, particularly in breaking through supposedly impregnable barbed wire. Though the combined use of artillery, infantry, tanks, and aircraft, which was in play here, certainly had more impact. You know, it might not seem like it, but in several ways, this was a pivotal week of the war. Obviously, the large-scale deployment of tanks, but also the evolving use of combined aircraft, infantry, artillery, and tanks. This is a big part of modern warfare. So, the evolving use of combined aircraft, infantry, artillery, and tanks. This is a big part of modern warfare, and we haven't seen a whole lot of it so far in the war, but the Allies are starting to put it together. But it might be too late. Russia asked for an armistice, and it looks like they're going to leave the war, which would free up thousands upon thousands of German troops to head west. And the US troops don't seem like they're going to be there in time for that. What could the British do? Well, they would just have to do as Maud instructed on his deathbed: carry on.